If you have been working with Power BI for any length of time, you know the drill. You want to calculate a simple running total or a moving average inside a matrix visual, and suddenly you are writing a 15-line DAX code filled with calculate, filter, all selected, and other complex row transitions. But what if I told you the era of fighting with evaluation context just to build a basic visual report is officially over? Welcome back to the channel. Today, we are diving deep into one of the most revolutionary features of Power BI, visual calculations. Instead of computing data at the model level, visual calculations allow you to write DAX directly on the visual itself. It has access to the data already rendered in your visual grid, making complex calculations incredibly fast to write and high performant to run. By the end of this video, you will know exactly how to use this feature, master its unique navigation concepts, and understand when to drop traditional measures in favor of this new workflow. Let's get into it. To truly appreciate why this feature is a game changer, we have to look at the underlying architecture. Traditionally, when you write a DAX measure, it operates at the model level. It doesn't care what visual it is in. It looks at the underlying tables, obeys the relationship in your semantic model, and recalculates every time filter or coordinates change. Because of this, doing something relatively simple like take this row's value and subtract the previous row's value is surprisingly very difficult in case of DAX because the DAX concept doesn't inherently know what a row or column inside a visual matrix. On the other hand, visual calculations completely flip the script. They operate at the visual level. Think of it as an Excel spreadsheet layer sitting directly on top of the Power BI visual. The visual queries at the model retrieves the data, build the visual grid, and only then does the visual calculations execute. It treats the rendered visual as its own temporary table. To keep it very simple, the usual columns and measures based out of DAX operate on top of the Power BI semantic model. On the other hand, the visual calculation takes only the data that is present in the visual as its source. Because it's just looking at the final grid, you no longer have to worry about the complex filter context or relationship cross filtering because they are all already applied while the visual is being built. It's simpler, it's safer, and it takes the headache out of the relative reporting. Now, depending on the Power BI version that you are using, visual calculations might still be in the preview feature or turned on by default. To make sure you have it active, head over to File, Options and Settings, Options, and here you should be seeing the preview features. Clicking on this preview features, you see the list of all preview features available. Here, you also see a preview feature called as visual calculation. In my case, it is already checked, but if it is unchecked, please go ahead and check this. Sometimes this would require you to restart the system. So it's always better when you enable a preview feature, you restart the Power BI desktop. Now I go and click on a visual, you see that a new visual calculation gets enabled. For the purpose of this demo, I am having two simple matrix visual. Now, before we type a single line of code, we have to master the most critical concept unique to visual calculations, the axis. Because visual calculations operate like a grid, they need to know which direction to look. Should they look top to bottom in the column side or should they look by rows? By default, most visual calculations operate along the row axis. This means the calculation will read vertically, move down from the top row to the bottom row. This is exactly what you want for a standard chronological list of months or years. However, if your matrix has fields dropped into the columns bucket, like you see here, where I have the category dropped into the column bucket, you can explicitly tell the formula to run across the column axis. Understanding this directionality is the secret to getting your results right on the first try, preventing your numbers from accidentally resetting or calculating across the wrong groupings. Let's jump into building our first visual calculation. We have column for sales and cost present in our matrix visual. We want to calculate the net profit. In the case of traditional tax, you would go and create a model level measure. Whereas in the case of visual calculation, we click on this visual, we see a new visual calculation at the top. I'm going to click on custom, and this is going to change the view such that it's going to have a separate visual at the bottom, which also has a formula bar. Here I'm going to type net profit equal to sales minus cost, and I'm going to click on the stick. The moment I click this, it is going to add a new visual calculation called as net profit. As you see here, the net profit has gotten added to this top also. It exists only inside this specific visual. This can be checked by you see the net profit present in this visual, whereas you won't see a net profit present in the data model. So this clearly says that whatever is the visual calculation that we have created, in this case, it's a very hyper specific measure and that lives only for this particular visual. There are many other examples that we can see using visual calculations. Now let's tackle the real pain point, running totals and moving averages. Traditionally, in Power BI, using DAX, calculating running totals and moving averages hasn't been that easy. For example, to calculate the rolling sum, I already have created a measure using the traditional tax. So this measure goes like I calculate the total sales and I'm going to have a filter context where I'm saying all selected of date and I'm also saying date should be less than the max date. I'm going to pull this in my bottom visual. As you see here, this is showing the rolling sum. But in visual calculation, this is going to be a simple single line code. As I said before, you can create a new visual calculation at the top as well as you have an option to create the new visual calculation when you click on the three dots of the visual. Here I go and click on running sum. Running sum and rolling sum are synonymous. This creates a formula in the formula bar which on clicking the arrow is going to show me the columns that are available for use. I'm going to click on sales. Once I click on sales, it's going to add a new measure called as running sum that does exactly the same thing that our DAX measure has been doing so far. To keep it simple, I'm going to go ahead and remove the product category from this. As you see here, the rolling sum and running sum are perfectly matching with each other. Now let's see one more scenario where we calculate the 3-month moving average. I'm going to expand one level down so that I'm also displaying the months. I click on the three dots, click on new visual calculation. I go and select the moving average. This is going to create a basic formula for moving average. Here I can select the sales and I can also specify for how many months I need this. So as I said before, I'm going to select 3. Now I'll also rename this as 3-month moving average. Now a new 3-month moving average has got added. So since this is the first month, it doesn't have the preceding 2 months. So it's going to be the same as the month's value. Whereas in this case of February, it's going to sum these two, divide by 2, it is going to give the moving average. And for the month, it's going to look at the past 3 months and it is going to give the moving average for the last 3 months. For the April, it's going to look at the past 3 months starting February and is going to give the moving average for April. To give you ultimate control over navigation within your visual grid, we have access to navigation functions too in visual calculations, namely first, last, previous, and next. These act exactly like relative cell referencing in Excel. For example, say you want to calculate month over month sales growth. Usually, this can be achieved by DAX but by writing bigger formula. In the case of visual calculation, I click on the visual, go to visual calculations. I can go ahead and say I need a custom. So this is going to open a custom calculation. I'm going to say month on month variance and here I can say my sales minus I can use a simple function called as previous and I'll say sales. This way, I'm going to say I need to subtract the previous month's sales from the current month's sales. As you see here, my first month it is showing the same month's value because there is no data for my previous month. Whereas in case of February, it is going to subtract the 332K with 516K. And that's why you see a negative 183K as the output. Similarly, if you want to compare every single row against the very first row of the data set, for instance, comparing every year's performance to the baseline month that sits at the top of our visual, you would use a comparison to baseline. In this case, let me go and add one more visual calculation, and I'm going to use a custom calculation here. I'm going to say comparison to baseline. Here I am going to again access my sales value, and to the sales I am going to subtract the first value of sales. One good thing here is you can also use the other visual calculations that you have created for this purpose. Now this has added me a new column which is going to show the comparison to baseline. The 516 minus 516 is 0, 332 minus 516 is minus 183, 411 minus 516 is 104, and so on and so forth. As you see here, every value is compared with the first value of sales amount. At this point, you are probably wondering, should I use this for absolutely everything? Let's talk about the performance and limitations because this is where you need to be strategic. From a performance standpoint, visual calculations are blazing fast because they run on summarized data. All the filter context and all the rules, relationships are already applied, and only the summarized data is going to be present in the visual, and hence the visual calculation is going to be working on top of the summarized data, which is going to be blazing fast. However, because this feature is still rapidly evolving within the Power BI ecosystem, there are a few strict limitations you should keep in mind. You have no reusability. As I told earlier, any visual calculation that you create in these visuals are only living to the life of the visual. If I go ahead and remove any visual calculation from here, I need to simply recreate it. There is no way I can find these visual calculations here. I see a comparison to baseline here, but I don't see it here in my data model. I removed, it's gone. You need to recreate it. Currently, you cannot use visual calculations in certain advanced visual types, and there are also restrictions when attempting to sort your visual by the calculated column itself. There is also one more restriction that you should be aware of. It is the conditional formatting. Sometimes using the visual calculation requires extra workarounds to perform the actual conditional formatting. Visual calculations represent a massive shift in how we build reports in Power BI. They bridge the gap between the rigid, robust nature of semantic modeling and the flexible grid-based analytical style that so many users love from Excel. My recommendation: use traditional DAX measures for your core reusable business metrics like total revenue, unit counts, and basic margins. But the moment you find yourself building a hyper specific visual, a matrix that needs complex running totals, or a relative row by row comparison, stop fighting the filter context and spin up a visual calculation instead. If you found this breakdown helpful, go ahead and smash that like button. Drop a comment below letting me know if you are going to start using this in your production reports. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into Power BI. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.